Shalom, this is Yara by Yah, back with another Torah portion. Today we're at Genesis chapter 3, and what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to focus on what knowledge are you seeking. We're going to look at Genesis chapter 3 today, and I'm not really reading through all these. You can grab your Bible and kind of go through the chapter and read it. I'm not going to read the whole chapter. I'm just going to pull out a few things. I want to keep these videos, as simple as possible. So I'm going to just kind of go right to the verses that I want to focus on. So I'm going to go to Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. And it says, "And the serpent," the NACHASH is the Hebrew word for serpent. "And the serpent, the NACHASH, was more crafty than all the lives of the field which Yahuah Elohim had made." The NACHASH was more crafty than all the lives of the field which Yahuah Elohim had made. So I have the Hebrew words up here. And so we have a noon, a het, and a sheen. A noon, a het, and a sheen is the word NACHASH. So we have the noon, which is a sprouting seed. It means to continue. It means air, sun, life. You can check out the image there. It makes a lot of sense. You look at the seed and what it looks like. We have the het. The het, it is a tent wall. And the definition for that is to divide, half, outside, to cut off. And then we have the sheen. And it's an image of two front teeth. And it has the definition of sharp, press, to eat, destroy. So that is the word NACHASH. Those are the Hebrew letters that make up the word NACHASH. So in English, NACHASH is translated into serpent, but the root, the NACHASH as a root, has been translated as throughout the scriptures as enchantment. It's been translated as diviner, as learned by experience, which is an interesting one, and also diligently observe. As you go through the scriptures, the word NACHASH is translated as those things as well. So that kind of gives you some more context on what that word means. So the NACHASH, the serpent, the NACHASH came on the scene and basically enchanted the woman to observe things from his perspective. He enchanted Eve to observe things from his perspective, and then she moved to gain a knowledge that came from an alternative source outside of Yah. So Yah gave them knowledge. Yah gave them what he wanted them to know. But because this NACHASH came on the scene and planted some seeds that caused Eve to question and to doubt and to begin to see different things, she moved outside of that where the Most High had her, and wanted to seek out knowledge from another source outside of the knowledge that Yah provided. So after she ate of this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, of Tob and Ra, as we talked about in the first video, suddenly we're going to take a look at verse 7 in here. Now in verse 7 it says, "Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made loin coverings for themselves." So now all of a sudden they knew that they were naked. Now they were already in that state. Earlier verse points that out, that it says that they were both naked and unashamed. Okay, so but now in verse 7, once they've eaten of this tree of good and evil, function and dysfunction, the knowledge of Tob and Ra, now they know, they have this new knowledge, they have this new consciousness of now their own nakedness. Now all of a sudden they know something in them knew shame, and they knew from their own minds, they came up with a way to solve this problem by sewing fig trees together to make their own covering. So now they're beginning to operate in a different knowledge than what the Most High had provided for them to operate in. Interesting. So when Yah encounters them in the garden and begins to question them, one of the questions he asks them is about how they gained this knowledge about their nakedness. In verse 11 he says, "Who made you know that you were naked?" In another version it says, "Who told you? Who told you this?" And in this verse it says, "Who made you know that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree of which I commanded you that you should not eat?" So he's asking them, where did this knowledge come from? It didn't come from me. I didn't reveal this to you. You've been eating from another source. So Yah had already given them all that they needed to know for life and all that was good and functional. He gave them everything that was good and functional for the life within the environment that he provided for them. So now this new knowledge that they're gaining wasn't bringing about life. It wasn't bringing about anything good or functional as they thought that it was. Eve saw that the fruit looked good for food and for gaining wisdom. She assumed that she would be gaining from what she did, but instead, this knowledge isn't bearing the fruit that they thought it would bear. It began bringing to their awareness knowledge that didn't have any function within the garden, within Yah's kingdom, within their environment. So now they're flowing in dysfunction. They're in Ra. They're in evil. It's the evil knowing that they've now gained when their eyes were open outside of Yah's protective order. So if we go back and take a look again at the Hebrew word NACHASH, if we look at the noon is a seed. And you think about it, the first thing that the NACHASH does, that it did to Eve, Hawa, and that it does to us is to sow a seed, to sow a thought, to sow a seed. And that seed, for them, it continued, that seed that started in the garden has continued to bear fruit up to this very day. And it's a continuation. It's something that's passed down. So when we look at the word noon, the letter noon, that makes a lot of sense as a part of this word. It's something that once you plant that seed, it continues to grow. Because a seed will continue to grow into a plant and to bear fruit and to bear more seeds unless you uproot it. So we see that in action here, and that's something that we need to think about as we're thinking about the deceptions that come into our lives. So the next letter, the het, is a tent wall again, and it divides or it cuts off. And that is the immediate impact that they faced when they ate from another source outside of Yah. They became cut off from the tree of life. They were placed outside of the garden, outside of the kingdom. So now they found themselves cut off from their original source. And that's how we find ourselves, is cut off when we allow certain seeds to be planted into our hearts and our minds. It cuts us off just by it's not that we get cut off, but that we cut ourselves off. We remove ourselves from the safe place that we were in. And then when we look at the sheen, those two front teeth that breaks down and consumes the fruit, eventually leads us to death. It leads us to destruction. It breaks down and leads to destruction. So this word is pretty powerful to me. It makes a lot of sense. Is within context, and it's pretty powerful how that works. So we should be seeking after and desiring the things that are going to lead us to life and not to destruction, and that the things that cause us to function within Yah's kingdom order as citizens of his kingdom, as children of the kingdom. We should be seeking those things that cause us to function and to experience life. And too often we're seeking after self-serving knowledge. So just like how the knowledge that they had didn't really matter. It wasn't, they knew more things, but it didn't function. It wasn't for their good. It wasn't helping them to bear fruit and to bring forth more life. and to fulfill the orders that the Most High gave them, which was to be fruitful, and to multiply. And I'm not just talking about having that doesn't just mean birthing children. It's also, multiplying in all of the things that the Most High had put in them, to be able to bring those things forth, to bring forth His image in the earth, in all those ways. And as we have His Ruach, His Spirit right now, we are able to bear the fruit of His Spirit, and to so that is being experienced by the people that are looking on, that are looking and seeking after the Most High, that are seeking the truth. They should be able to experience that in dealing with us. So if our knowledge is not, the things that we are seeking to know is not bringing forth and bearing the fruit of His image, the fruit of His character, the fruit of His Spirit, then it's self-serving. What is the point of it? It's not functional. It's not. It's outside of what the Most High desires to reveal to us. He reveals to us things that bring forth more life. He reveals to us things that show us more of who He is, and can appreciate more of His character and His creation. And He reveals to us things that show us the things within ourselves that we don't know. If our knowledge is only pointing outwards to other people and to things that are ultimately distractions, then we need to look at the source of the knowledge that we're acquiring. So we have to take a look at our lives and figure out if we see this NACHASH operating in our lives anywhere. So we know that the adversary is at work in the earth, okay, and there's spiritual forces at work in the earth, and the adversary, the prince of the air. We can look at it a whole lot of ways. We look at the spirits that are out there. We can look at the things like the media and how information comes to us. There are all these different things out there that would even deceive the very elect if we're not careful. So we have to look and see where seeds are being planted. Pretty soon I'm going to do an ongoing series that's going to be dealing with guarding our gates, guarding ourselves from the various things that attempt to come against us. So look out for that coming soon. But look at your life to figure out where and what areas are open for the adversary to be able to come in, and this NACHASH spirit to be able to come in and plant seeds that will eventually grow and lead us to destruction, as we looked at in the word NACHASH. So we have to take a look at that, because we don't want to end up being cut off. So look at the things that you're allowing to come into your ears, the things that you're allowing yourself to meditate on, the things that you're seeking out, and figure out what kind of fruit that is bearing. Is this source, is Yah really the source of it? And everything that looks like light is not the light of Yah. There's a lot of lights out there. So everything that looks like light is not coming from Yah, because it's not functional in His kingdom. So we have to test the spirits to see where it's coming from. And that's something that Eve failed to do, and suffered the consequences for that. Also, we have to look inside ourselves to see if there's a NACHASH operating within us that's coming from our own hearts and our own minds, our own thoughts. And we have to test ourselves, our own meditations, and the things that are coming from within us. We have to test those things to see what kind of seeds that we have allowed to grow, and what we may need to uproot and pluck out from ourselves. And then also our relationships, the people that we interact with on a daily basis, can plant seeds and cause us to flow in a knowledge that is not functional, that's not good, that's not bearing forth fruit. So we have to examine all of our relationships to see what the kind of fruit is being bared, and to make sure that that NACHASH type spirit is not seeping in, or that we're not being NACHASH, because we can be NACHASH in someone else's life. We tend to look at other people and what they're doing to us, but we don't. We should also be careful and diligent to figure out how we are affecting others, and examine our hearts and how we may be NACHASH to someone else. We may be leading someone else to be cut off, and dropping seeds that are going to lead them to destruction. So we have to examine ourselves to make sure that we're operating in a told spirit, in a good spirit, in a functional spirit, and always look back towards the kingdom and back towards the intention and purposes and design of our Father, and what He wills for us. So that's what I wanted to share from this for this Torah portion from Genesis chapter 3, and I pray that it was beneficial. See you in the next session. Shalom.